One of the true leaders here in Bay County, and I mean, I have a tremendous amount of respect for, his position here as County Commissioner. And I'm excited that he is joining us here tonight to talk about what's going on in the county and also his campaign for State Representative. Commissioner Griff Griffitts.
Thank you, though. Thank you, really. I appreciate the invitation. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you to Debbie for what you're doing for the party as well. Y'all do a tireless amount of work with probably very little thank yous, so thank you for what you're doing. So most of y'all, if you don't know me, I'm Philip Griffitts Jr. Everybody calls me Griff. If you start asking for Philip, I probably won't turn around, so please address me as Griff. I am your county commissioner, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a third generation Bay County. I was born right here at Bay Medical. Went to Beach School, Jenks Junior High, Bay High School, went off to Florida State, got a political science degree. Thought I was going to be a lawyer, got smart, and came back and went into the family business, the hotel business. My dad bought a 13-room hotel in 1974. He was working for Southern Bell and was moving up in the ranks, and Southern Bell said, we're going to transfer you to Miami. And my dad was born and raised here and was like, I'm not going to Miami. And he said, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And he found a 13-room hotel way out on the west end of the beach. Wrote a $5,000 bad check, ran back to his father-in-law and said, I gotta borrow $5,000 or me, you, your daughter-in-law, and grandson, we're all moving to Miami. And my great-grandfather in his infinite wisdom said, I'll loan you the money. And so my dad started a 13-room hotel. Me and my mother moved in the back room behind the office, lived there for many, many years while he grew the business. We clean rooms, every job on the property I've done. I've cleaned trash cans and swimming pools and front desk work and all that. We built the hotel up to right at 100 units. We bought another hotel, we built that up to right at 100 units. We sold one, we built the La Quinta over here on Thomas Drive, built that up. And then in 2018 decided to sell all the hotels. My father was getting up in age and he was tired of working that hard. As we all know, help is so hard to get in the service industry. It's much harder now than it ever was. I can't imagine the trials that our folks are facing now trying to gather help on this beach. It's terrible. So we sold the hotels in 2018 and me and my brother started a small construction company. We built spec homes around the county. I learned a lot in the hotel world. I learned to go without a check. I learned how to pay my people before I paid myself. I know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and worry about how you're gonna make payroll. Those are things I think the business taught me to really be a good tax steward. So as I was growing up at the hotel in the early 2000s, I should say, I was there long before that, but in the early 2000s as Bay County was kind of growing, our planning and zoning department was evolving and our land development code was getting started in Bay County. I had a group of what I would call radical residents out on the west end of the beach that tried to zone my property residential. That would have made me a non-conforming use. And as a business owner, that's a scary thing. If you lose 51% of your business, whether it's fire, flood, hurricane, whatever, you cannot rebuild that business if it's a non-conforming use. So I went to fight. I went to every planning board meeting. I went to every workshop to try to make sure that my property rights were what I thought were fair. And we prevailed, thankfully. But during that process, I got involved in local politics. I got on the planning board. I was appointed to the Bay County Planning Board. I served 9 years there. Moved from there to the Tourist Development Council. Seemed a natural fit. I was a hotel owner, a tax collector of the bed tax, so it was a natural fit to go sit on the TDC for several years. Still sit on the TDC today as a commissioner. While I was sitting on the TDC, Commissioner Thomas decided he wanted to be mayor of the beach, so he left a vacant seat at the county commission. Governor Rick Scott called and asked me to come in for an interview for an appointment. We sat down, we had a long discussion about those core principles that Governor Scott thought were critical, were low taxes, less regulations, small government, and a fostering environment for business in the state of Florida. And I carried those to the commission. Got appointed in 2016, re-elected in August of that year, and have continued to serve since then. Served as chairman during 2 years of Hurricane Michael and a pandemic, which were unprecedented times, very, very scary for us. Lots of decisions we had to make on the fly during both those circumstances, which I think we did a very good job considering. Some of the accolades I think the counties should be proud of. And as a group, I talk about the county as a group because the 4 guys I serve with are not only my friends, but they're also very dedicated public servants that really care about Bay County and want to make it best for y'all. So Bay County right now as a whole, we've got a lot going on. Our budget is going to be over $400 million this year. Largest budget we've ever had. We've been able to hold the millage firm since 2018. We actually reduced it after the voters voted in the half-cent sales tax in 2016. In 2018, we reduced our budget, our millage, so we've kept that millage firm. We had to borrow $300 million after the hurricane to pay for damage expenses, and we did not have to raise taxes on our people. I think that's something that we all are very proud of, because there's a lot of municipalities, a lot of counties that are surrounding us that cannot say that. They had to do things differently. We really pinched our budget. We tightened our belt. We told everybody that worked for the county, all 700 people, look, these are gonna be tough a few years, but we've got to do what's right. So we've made the decisions to do those. We've done a great job, I think, trying to preserve what is a great economic environment for Bay County, low taxes, a great business environment to try to grow jobs, still keeping our water quality as clean as we can, whether it's the Gulf of Mexico, St. Andrews Bay, or Econfina, which is our drinking water. Those are things I think at the county level we've tried to maintain and keep the level of service for you folks in Bay County as high as we can while not charging you any more than we have to. It gets more expensive every year, but we're going to do our very best to try to stop that. As a candidate, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, are you going to run for the state house, I would have said no. I had a lot going on. I'm a father, businessman, husband, and a county commissioner, and I thought that's enough. I don't need any more. I'm very happy in my life. But I will tell you, over the last 2 years working through Tallahassee and the lobbying effort that we as locals have had to put in to fight for recovery dollars, as well as our Bay County values around the state, to keep them in the state levels. The state actually is not as broken as Washington, D.C. It's 78% Republican. We have to live under a balanced budget. Those are all things that we should be proud of as Floridians. But I saw the hard work that was being put in by our state legislators, and I know that the traction is there. And if we lose that traction, we will once again be the panhandle of Florida, which is forgotten. There's 120 legislators in the state. There's 7 from the panhandle. Everybody's from South Florida. So you've got to build alliances with people to try to work through these problems. South Florida will take every dollar from the panhandle they can get. They don't care about us. They will drive us to the bottom and take every penny if we don't all stand together. So if you look around the state, they build coalitions. The Panhandle Coalition is very strong. Senator Gannett, Senator Broxson, all these folks, along with Representative Trumbull, Representative Schoaf, Representative Drake, these are folks that all stand together as a panhandle because they're proud of their values, they're proud of what they're doing in Tallahassee, and they also know that South Florida will infiltrate us and turn us into the cesspool that South Florida is. We are very blessed to live in God's country. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I could go on and on and on about how much I love Bay County and how many years I've spent here swimming in, Watson Bayou or Econfina or the Inlet or the Gulf. Those are places that I've grown up. I'm an outdoor guy, but I love Bay County and I always want to do what's best for it. I have a deep affection for here and I'm not going anywhere. Raised my children here. My oldest just moved to New York City. I do not know why, y'all. I'm still in counseling over that. I know it's fine, but I'm hoping y'all pray for a cold New York winter so that she'll decide to come back home to her daddy. But she is almost 25 years old, so at 25 I was having babies. If she wants to move to New York at 25, I'm like, okay, go ahead, you do your thing. But great job, I'm proud of her and I'm glad she's doing that. But my youngest daughter still lives here and works hard. My wife was born and raised here as well. We have deep roots. We love Bay County, we love District 6, and we're not going anywhere. One thing about District 6 that's going to change is we are in redistricting. It's the 10-year cycle of the census. We're starting to get that data rolling in. Right now, single member districts in Florida represent 157,000 people. It's going to go up to 179,000 roughly. So the district's going to grow a little bit. So that means, right now it runs from about Highway 20 south. So let's hope that in the state's infinite wisdom, when they redraw these lines, it'll just encompass Bay County. We don't need to include Gulf or Walton or Washington. Keep our home base right here in Bay County. So I'm hopeful that they'll do that. And that will probably start rolling out over the next 60 to 90 days. We'll start seeing maps. But that also affects the county commission races as well and the school board races. So the districts in the county will change because we've had such growth. The beach District 5, which is really the island, if you call it, has about 11,000 extra voters than it did 10 years ago. So we have to pull 11,000 voters out of that and put them in another district to make everybody even. So there's going to be a lot of movement going on over the next 60 to 90 days, 100 days with redistricting. And so that will be, the school board will be involved as well, because the districts should all match each other. So there's a lot going on at the county level. There's a lot going on at the state level. I would love to be your representative next year. I humbly ask for your support. I thank you for your time, and I think that the more we get across with questions and simple conversations, the more relaxed and comfortable it is. So with that being said, though, can we have some questions? Yes. So any questions, y'all, please? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Mary Grace, and I wanted to say that I loved watching you on Chasing the Sun.
Oh, thanks. That was a great time. That was a lot of fun.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was they've been trying to put that show. The show is a very big success for the TDC, and it's marketed all over the country on the Discovery Channel, and we get lots of accolades. And they invited me to go fishing, and I was like, heck yeah, I'll be there. It was a dream day. It was really a lot of fun, so thank you.
I got to see that. But yeah. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about hometown rule?
Home rule. So home rule is really, I think, a really important process. So as a commissioner, I think I'd like home rule, because the government closest to the people is the most effective. We know what we're doing here in Bay County. We know how to control ourselves. Look, Tallahassee's making rules for everybody. A big old blanket, big old paintbrush for everybody. And I don't understand it, but I also understand that when you get some wild rabid county like Alachua or Orange that says we're gonna raise minimum wage to $20 or we're gonna mandate masks or anything like that, I can see where Tallahassee says home rule is no good. But then you have situations like we have in a resort community where we have a lot of these, the vacation rentals, right? So vacation rentals pop up, and they might be next door to a residential home, and it's got an advertisement that seats 25 people, but it's got 2 parking places. So that's really a problem for the neighbors, but they won't allow locals to control that. So there are certain cases I think that home rule is super, super important, and that we have to maintain that here locally. I think Tallahassee forgets that sometimes because of those rogue counties that do those crazy things, and they have to kind of step in and do this blanket approach. But I think home rule is very important for us. Yes, ma'am. Any more questions? I know there's some more. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the red flag law, and are you for or against it?
I'm against it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think that's listen, Representative Trumbull's done a fantastic job for us, but and I've disagreed with him on certain things over the last 8 years, but that's one thing we've disagreed on, and we've spoken about it. But yeah, if it were to ever come back and I would be in a position, we would do our best to repeal that.
Could you push the issue with, could you get other folks to start?
It's obviously, I think, a discussion.
You know what I mean? Kind of get the discussion going.
You always discuss it, but what I think you have to understand is
Instead
this.
of just sit back and wait for someone to bring it to you.
Well, you're only allowed to pass 6 legislative bills a session. So you got to be prioritizing what we want to do. And right now we're still in a recovery mode. And so I think you have to, those guys down south that are, they're not in recovery mode. I think it might be better for one of those guys and we get on board with them and we start supporting that initiative. But if the community decides that that's the most important legislative priority, then we do it.
It might not be the most important, but I think it's
But top 5, top
very
6,
important.
right, I believe so.
Right.
You don't mess with the Second Amendment. I'm extremely pro-life, I'm pro-military, pro-veteran. I mean, the conservative agenda is something I've lived with my whole life. I don't know it any different. I didn't come to it 4 years ago because it was popular. I've been doing this my entire life. I just believe that the less the government gets in your business, the better off we are. As a business owner, I hated regulation. I hated dealing with inspectors. I hated with it. Now I get it. There's certain things we have to do to regulate that, but the less they mess with business, the more environment that we create for an open and free market. Listen, the trickle-down theory it's not a theory. It works very well. It works very well. Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of business, how do you feel about mandatory E-Verify for everyone?
Yes.
Listen,
Yes.
the immigration problem
Yes.
is something that's got to be fixed. And granted, thankfully, we don't have a fence at our border. We got a big old Gulf of Mexico. It'd be hard to come across that. But the immigration issue is something that look, President Biden, let's all face it, if he is your father or your grandfather, the family is sitting around the table right now trying to figure out who's going to have the conversation to take the car keys away. Okay, that's just the truth. It's the truth. And so he's turned his back on what is a very important issue. It's probably the most important issue right now facing America. And he doesn't seem to care. 40,000 people a day crossing our borders with, I mean, you can talk to our sheriff. These busts that they're having, these fentanyl busts, that's coming across our borders. These aren't guys making it up in Southport. This is coming across the border.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is.
Hiring of illegals.
Yeah, we
Right.
did construction and turned in a bid and they like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For less
No,
pay.
listen, there's got to be a way to, listen, I'm in favor of legal immigration. I mean, if somebody wants to come over here and go through the channels and work and contribute, come on. We got plenty of jobs. There's help-wanted sons all over this country. But to come over here illegally, try to take advantage of me, my family, you, and your families, and the system is completely wrong. Completely 100% wrong. And anything we can do to try to stop it or to stymie it, I'm all in.
If we can,
Super spreaders, 100%. How can they come across the border with COVID? And I mean, look, we could go on and on about the derelict of duty from the left. I mean, you know, voter ID, right? Come on. You can't go run a wave run on Tallahassee Beach without an ID. But they think you can vote for the highest office in the land. It's comical. It's really the arguments are not.
if you can't have the E-Verify mandated, can you have anything mandated where a business will get fined big time if they get caught?
I would
Hiring
imagine.
people under the table, paying them
Oh,
lower?
listen,
Can you put that on the books?
That E-Verify is,
You know,
every business, businesses are gonna continue to do the underhand, under the table kind of thing. But whatever
It needs to be a
we
big
can
fine
do,
to deter it.
whatever we can do to try to deter it, I think is something
Right.
the state, but really the federal government has gotta step in and stop
Right.
this border problem. Cause it's not gonna get any better as long as we keep letting them pile across the border.
Yep.
I mean, they're just running through it.
They're shipping children here.
Social media is a great thing, but it's also can be our worst enemy. I keep hearing that there are illegal aliens that are being dropped, or that are being dropped off here in Bay County or throughout.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I
Do
don't
you,
doubt
as
it.
a county commissioner, are you aware of any of that being actually factual?
No, I'm not, but I would lose my mind if I knew they were being bussed to our community. That would be, I mean, I think our sheriff would lose his mind. I mean, that's not gonna, the truth is, where are they gonna stay? I mean, we don't have anywhere to live.
Catholic Charities
Yeah.
taking children in Shoe Carnival,
While our veterans are sleeping under bushes.
bringing them out.
But yeah, I haven't heard that. Now, I've heard about that going on in Texas where they're crossing the borders and they're putting them on buses and sending them to Tennessee and all these places. I've heard about that, but I have not heard that. Now, I talk to our sheriff regular about the issues facing the county, and I have not heard that. So that would be a concern of everyone, and we would address that head on. We would flat address that. That would be serious. Rick?
Griff, I just want to tell you how encouraged I am to hear you talk about the coalition building. We have fewer representatives in North Florida. Once the South Florida population outgrew us, we have been constantly paying for the sins of South Florida with regulation and laws
That's for
that
sure.
hurt us up here. And there's no other way to combat that except the coalition building. I'm really glad that you have recognized that.
Yeah, thank you. There's 44 House members from Miami-Dade County, so they're a pretty strong group already. But listen, we're not afraid of a fight. Bay County and the Panhandle, we are a tough bunch, and we'll continue to do it. I feel like I've been fighting for Bay County since I was a commissioner, but even more so since after the hurricane. I mean, y'all, the conversations we've had with every federal or state agency since October of 18. Government loves acronyms, and if it's PPDR, FEMA, or CBDG, and all this nonsense. But the truth is if you don't hold their feet to the fire, they don't care. I mean, Bay County is so far ahead, y'all, of other municipalities. We learned so much during Hurricane Michael, and a lot of it was from these communities who had been through it. Within a week of Michael hitting, we had the city manager, or I'm sorry, the county manager from Monroe County, Key West, up here in our EOC, sitting down with us at a table, and I remember having a cup of coffee with him and saying, tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we just went through 2 hours of conversations about what they had been going through, because they had gone through Irma 18 months earlier. And so we learned a lot. We've paid back 150 of the $300 million we borrowed. We are years ahead of some of these other communities, years and years ahead. We've done a very good job with that. That's a testament. I mean, look, Bay County stepped up, not just the commission and the municipalities, the citizens stepped up. I mean, y'all heard chainsaws and everybody was pitching in, working together. But the rising tide floats all boats, and we really did a good job. I think every municipality in the county, every county has I call them a reimbursement specialist. They're FEMA reimbursement specialists. We have a company called CDR McGuire, and they were on site literally when the hurricane hit. They were standing with us at the EOC, and as soon as we could start working again with computers, which was a few hours later, they were submitting the forms. Everything has to be documented. If you have one thing wrong, they'll claw that money back. So we've done a fantastic job with that. It's something to be really proud of.
I have a question for you. So, Central Air Force Base, needless to say, everybody knows, was decimated and is still in the process of demolition before they rebuild. So, in the meantime, though, the areas surrounding Tyndall that were also decimated on Primo property are now being picked up by developers to develop, which is being approved for them to go ahead with this. My concern is the encroachment on Tyndall Air Force Base being a fighter base, which is going to have more jets than before.
Right.
And as soon as we start getting noise complaints, the Air
Well,
Force likes to, pull.
So with every military base in Florida, there's a thing called JLUS, Joint Land Use Study. So every military installation, when something is developed within a perimeter, they have a say-so. So if something's built on this beach close to that Navy base is at the table telling us no. So when we built the La Quinta right down the street here, the Navy base was like, you can build it 3 floors, no more. So so when you talk about encroachment, the Tyndall Air Force Base is at the table with everything that's being proposed around them, and if they said no, it's done. Wouldn't make it to the planning board or the commission.
Okay, so what's your opinion, though, on a lot of the development right in that area?
Well, let's face it, it needs some urban renewal over there. There needs to be some urban renewal. Parker, Springfield, Callaway. Callaway has done probably a better job than most since the hurricane. They're financially a little more solid. Parker doesn't have an ad valorem tax, so they're a small little city that just hangs on anyway, and then you dump a big Cat 5 on them and they're struggling. Springfield is very similar in that situation, but Mayor Hammond does a fantastic job over there and pays cash for everything he does and has really kind of turned the city around. But those cities, so here's a great point. Tyndall is going to get rebuilt, correct, right? We know that, and there's going to be some rebuild. But if we don't improve the area outside of Tyndall, which is where people live, if we don't improve our educational quality, then Tyndall is going to stop growing. So those are things we have to focus on. We've got to put education back in the parents, let the parents make the decision, because I think it's better that way. But because our education quality around here it should be improving. It needs to get better.
The Air Force Department of Defense put in the stipulations that if your academic system, if you're not scoring at certain levels, they are not going to invest money into the growth of bases.
Can you blame them?
No, I wouldn't, because nobody wants to come.
You can't have airmen and women transfer into a base that have children and say, hey, we're going to put you in this, the base of the future. We're going to put you at the base of the future, but your kid's got to go to a subpar school. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. We have the floating boat, right? The rising tide. We got to all work together. We have 10 years, I believe, to work as hard as we can to make District 6 Bay County we will be the envy of the country. We have a blank slate at Tyndall. We have a lot of new growth on the ground. I think we were at the tip of the spear as far as where people wanted to come visit before Hurricane Michael, and I think now I mean, there's people come here, they don't even know we have a hurricane. I mean, they don't have a clue. I mean, we have so many people moving into town. Carol was talking about this earlier, how busy she is with these out-of-state customers. The tax collector says he has about 100 people a week coming into his office doing title work and tags from out of state. I mean, look, we all live here because we love it. They just figured it out. We know where paradise is. We've been here and this is home. They just figured it out. And let's face it, Florida's free. So you can come down here and live your life, and you don't have to be like my crazy daughter and move to New York City and have to live under draconian rule. So, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
I guess my question's a little odd, but it has to do with the development of the area,
Okay.
looking at the growth of the beach and so forth. And I was born and raised here too, so I'm very
You've seen it.
vested. Yeah, and I've seen how it's grown a lot. I'm 52, so I've seen the whole time. So I guess what I would like to say is, South Florida, you mentioned that earlier, and I do think it's overgrown and so forth. And I'm not against development, but intelligent development in our area. So how do you foresee that? And I think sometimes other parts of the state see this as backwards. I mean, I totally disagree with that, but we want to keep the natural beauty and we want to develop. But how do you see? What are your plans to make that happen?
Yeah, no, I agree. We have to have smart growth. Let's face it. We all know we have traffic infrastructure issues. We're better than we were 4 or 5 years ago, but we're still 10 years behind where we need to be. We're better off than our neighbors. I mean, you go to Walton County, the traffic over there, and it'll never get better because there's nowhere to go. Thankfully, we have growth, the availability of growth to the north with the Philip Griffitts Parkway that will be extended all the way to the sports park. It'll run all the way to 79, and then eventually, I don't know how much longer. This is probably a 10 or 15-year dream, but St. Joe will have a highway that will run from 79 at 388 that will go all the way to Walton County. It'll run across the Intercoastal Waterway down near the Origins, if you're familiar with Origins, right as you cross the Phillips Inlet Bridge. So there'll be a possibility of one day you might be able to pull in at the Chip Seal Parkway, hit Philip Griffitts Parkway, and run all the way down to Walton County. Hopefully, our plan is at the county level to make it express only. Service roads off that road only, so there's no lights. So people can move east and west up and down this beach, because that's critical. We're behind that. But that's something I think we have to focus on in Tallahassee's transportation infrastructure is so critical to our success.
Well, I know the beach has a lot of problems. Lynnhaven does too. So.
390. Listen, if you think back Beach Road is an issue, it's only an issue for 100 days a year. Go to 231 in the morning. I mean, coming south, that's 360, every work day. It's a zoo. All of these things are things the DOT knows about. The DOT, if you think local government or state government, local government's slow, the state government is like turning a battleship. I mean, it is slow. DOT plans way out in 10 and 20 and 30-year increments, right-of-way acquisitions and what they, PD&E studies and all this. They can make a one-car funeral difficult. That's all I can tell you. They can, but the truth is we have to focus on good growth, but we also have to understand that these people have property rights just like we do. We don't want people telling us what to do with our property, and they have their property. They don't just get building permits from Bay County. They have to go through a litany of things. They have to go through traffic studies. They have to go through wetland studies. There's a myriad of federal and state agencies that we have to go through. I mean, right now we've got this crazy Bay County crayfish problem that we're dealing with. Y'all know the difference between the Bay County crayfish and the Louisiana crayfish?
Yeah, we got the only endangered.
Ours is sweeter. But
Panama City crayfish. I actually want to save that little critter.
We are going to. We're gonna set aside 2,000 acres because otherwise anybody, and it's really limited where it is. It's not anywhere on the beach. It's kind of like this 231 corridor that kind of runs up through downtown, and we have to set it aside. Or anybody that wants to do anything in those. I mean, if you wanted to go clean out your ditch in your front yard, you can't.
So there are plans to set up some of that.
We're building a mitigation bank that will be able to use for every citizen in Bay County. So you can just say, look, I live in the crayfish zone, but the bank is over here and I can do my work and everything's good.
Just eat a different kind of crayfish.
Different. Don't eat the Bay County crayfish. Don't leave those alone. That was a bad joke. The truth is, I like to use that joke because it is the second smallest subset of a endangered species in the state. There's one smaller, it's like called the wolf beetle or something, in South Florida, and it's like 10 square blocks or something. So it's a small little subset, but look, the Fish and Wildlife at the federal agency, they don't play. It's like our turtles on the beach. When they become at that level, it's a serious game. You do not mess with them, and you just have to work with them as best you can. So, but we are setting aside mitigation. Yes, sir.
Last question.
So my question is more about the state representative piece there.
Okay.
Obviously, I was raised in the bulletin board systems, computers, all that kind of stuff, and I'm very aware of the hacking and the machines. My issue is, like, are you against getting rid of machines, going to paper ballots? Do you want to do that? Are you going to do an audit in the state?
Well, that's a good question. So what I can tell you is, so he was talking about voting machines, getting rid of voting machines, going to paper ballots, kind of creating an audit type system. So what I'll tell you is I was fortunate enough as chairman of the commission to sit on the canvassing board last November during the presidential election. Florida did it right, for the most part. Bay County did it really right.
Yeah.
Mark Anderson is the best supervisor of elections in the state. I've sat there with him for hours and hours, because the canvassing board is not just the day of election. It's absentees leading up to it. I mean, it is a lot of work sitting there with Mark, who is, you know, a former Navy SEAL and wound pretty tight, in a small little room watching him do his work. After the hurricane, the Secretary of State, Laurel Lee, came to Bay County for Mark to plead his case about having super sites, what we call mega sites, but we had to change them from mega sites because it sounded too much like MAGA. So, true story. So we changed them to mega sites. That's a true story. And so, Mark had the supervisor of elections in his office. He asked me to come down as chairman to talk to her, explain to her, we don't have the buildings we had to put precincts up. They're gone. I mean, they're gone. So we were standing around talking, and I asked her, I said, have you been to all 67 supervisors' office in the state? She said, yes. I said, who's the best? She said, he's standing right there. She said, hands down, no question. She said, if everybody in the state followed this guy, we'd be the model of the country. That's I mean, Mark Anderson does a fantastic job. So while I know there were issues, we know there were issues. Mark, if you ever want to see how an election is, how it's counted and how it's super transparent, go watch it. I mean, it's pretty impressive. If you hear these stories about people putting paper up over the windows and all that, not going to happen. Mark Anderson errs on the side of caution.
I'm more concerned like the machines themselves, the hackability of it. You can be great buttoned up when it comes to the effectiveness, but the machines, if they're not.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, we got to make sure that there's firewalls, and you can't have that availability to hack it. But I believe locally our election was very sound, very, very sound. And what goes on around the state, listen, we know there's some bad apples in South Florida. And we know there's bad apples all over the country.
The machines themselves.
You know, but listen, you can talk about hacking, but I guarantee you there's probably as much fraud in paper ballots as well.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that.
So I don't know the answer of how to make it foolproof, but I'm very confident that we did a very good job here locally, and the state of Florida did a pretty good job as well.
Okay, well, there's evidence that like 1 million votes in the machines were switched.
That would be, listen, that's something we've got to challenge. If that's the problem, I mean,
Audit would solve that, right?
well, they are audited locally. We audit ours. I mean, they run through the machine, and then there's a separate audit done. I mean, they do that. So it's not just. Listen, I encourage everybody. You should go watch them at a canvassing board. You should go down there and watch how it's done, and see. There's obviously fraud in everything we do. There's people that love to. For every law we make, there's some guy trying to figure out how to get around that law. And if it's a computer, and if you're a computer whiz, there's guys out there that are so smart they can hack your phone from China while we're standing here, right? We know that. If there's a way to foolproof that, then I'm 100% behind it. We have to have integrity in our elections, 100%. There's no question about that. If you don't have faith in the vote, then you're wasted. It's a waste of vote. I don't know if that's a good answer for you, but
It's an answer.
yeah. No, I think
No machines or machines?
we still be counting ballots. Paper ballots, probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we're an automated society. We live and die by a computer these days. Listen, if you go back to, there's businessmen on this beach that would love to go back to paper because you can steal a little more money. Because if it's a computer, it counts every penny. Right. I mean, there's a trade-off in all that, but I don't know that. I think is it, like I said, hanging chads? I don't know what the answer to that might be, but I feel like whatever we can do at the state and federal level and the local level to ensure the integrity, 100% we've got to do that. That's the key. That's the key. So, a couple more?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Well, we're talking about elections, and we had one in April here. School tax, 75% of the people said no.
Yeah, they shut it
There was
down.
a lot of money poured out to get that thing on the ballot.
School board spent some money.
Yeah.
200,000.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, the school board did
Everybody
that.
said no.
School board did that. That's separately, that's 6 elected officials. Yeah, that's 6 elected officials that asked to have that put on the ballot.
To raise everybody's property tax.
That's right, and it soundly defeated. Could have told you that before it was on the ballot. Could have told you that before it was on the ballot. That wasn't going to happen, and I think everybody knew that. But that look.
Waste of money though.
Well, I mean, you have to talk to the school board about that. Yeah, because they came to the county and said, we want you to put this on the ballot. By statute, we're required to do that, but we weren't going to pay for it. Because I mean, no way, not a chance.
Okay, I don't know if this is your purview as a state representative, but I'm very concerned. I have a son right now who's a junior at UF. I'm a teacher myself.
I'm sorry, I'm a son of Florida State.
Don't be All right. But my question for you is it in your purview, and how do you feel about the state mandating? And now our state is not mandated, but my home state, I grew up in California, and many other states across the country have mandated that students receive the COVID vaccine in order to attend classes, right?
Yeah,
And this is happening all across the country.
Listen, I don't speak for my other 4 commissioners, but I am not mandating anything. We're not that county. We're not those.
No, I know Governor DeSantis would be against it. He's obviously.
Oh yeah, he said it from the beginning. But he said you can be pro-vaccine and anti-mandate. I mean, that's what the governor said. So that's understandable. Yeah, give everybody their personal freedom. If you want to get the vaccine, go get it. If you don't.
Well, a number of the private universities in South Florida have already mandated.
Well, listen, universities are a breeding ground of liberalism. They want to teach you. I went to FSU, and I was the odd man out. I mean, I can remember being up there and going, these people are crazy. Like, what are they talking about? And my daughter went to FSU, and when she went, I was like, don't say a word. Like, you got to keep your mouth shut, or you're going to get in trouble. Because she said, in a class, they said, how many of y'all voted for Trump in 2016? She was the only one to raise her hand. I said, well, you failed. You failed that class. And she was like, I think it was some crazy philosophy class or something. She got a C. Only C she made in college. And I said, that's because you spoke up. I said, don't say another word, because that is, you're surrounded by people who do not think like you.
On that same issue, though, to your knowledge, are any state representatives trying to get that mandated for Florida?
Are there any state representatives that are asking for a mandate for the universities?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question. I would think. Listen, we have 78 Republican House representatives. We have 24 Republican senators, and I believe that I don't think they're going to allow that to happen. We're a Republican state pretty much through and through, at least at the governance level in Tallahassee, and I think they're all following DeSantis's lead for the most part, as far as those crazy, arbitrary, stupid things that we've done over the last 18 months with. How many people? I mean, I had so many friends that were public health experts. I had no idea. They tell me that were, guys that were, real estate agents and lawyers and all that were so smart with public health, and it's amazing to me all the things we've done over the last 18 months that really have made a difference.
Well, look at Sacred Heart. I mean, they're going to be firing their employees who refuse to get the vaccine.
And the courts are backing that up too, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
So that's a little problematic. But and I don't want to say, you don't want to tell the nurses walk out, or just leave your job, because then you've got 100 COVID patients that just die up at the hospital. So I don't understand the mentality. I don't get why you can't let people just be free. let them make their own decisions. It's real simple. It's very simple. We all do a pretty good job if you leave us alone. We all, you know, you make a living, you take care of your family, you don't need a lot of government interference, you know, provide for the common defense, take care of my roads and stuff, and otherwise, leave me alone.
What do you say on that same topic? I'm a teacher in Bay County, and Hussville first sprang it on us
Last minute.
that we needed to wear masks, right? Well, I'm not wearing a mask.
Good for you.
And I'm probably the only teacher at most of high school not wearing a mask.
Well, I don't blame you.
But
Look,
so far they have, you know,
They haven't walked you off the campus yet?
what are the how about the kids? What's the
I
percentage?
would say the kids in my class is probably 4/5 of them are not wearing masks.
Okay.
Maybe 1/5 are.
But you're teaching high school kids. Think of the little guys. I mean, listen, I applaud you because being in the school system today would be super, super tough. I mean, super, super tough.
It's a lot more stressful than it ever used to be.
I would imagine so. So I applaud you and thank you for what you're doing. I had one go to Mosley and one go to Arnold, and Mosley is a jam-up school. They do a great job there. They did a fantastic job with my girl. So, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I know development is very important. However, will you prioritize infrastructure and stormwater over development? Because the big thing, I moved here 20 years ago, the big thing that I really saw surprising was the amount of dirt roads in Bay County.
197
I was
miles or
appalled.
something like that. Yeah.
I could not believe
Listen, we didn't get a planning and zoning map until 2004. I mean, we were pretty backwoods until 20 years ago. So we're still catching up, but we're doing a pretty good job. But stormwater, so now if you build any development now, you have to retain your stormwater on site. So if you can't see it, it's underground. So you can't dump stormwater on your neighbor, that's against the law. So if there's any new development going on, stormwater is being retained on site. So that's absolutely an imperative. The development is booming because we are paradise, there's no doubt. But these folks are not just given a carte blanche to just go do what they want to do. They have a lot of hoops to jump through to get what they want.
That was for all of Bay County, you were saying?
Well, I'm not sure about the municipalities. The Bay County Code requires stormwater retained on site. Certain cities, there's certain parts of Bay County that are just built in a bowl. You know, they're just. I mean, if you look on a map, they're in a wetland, and to move water when it's flat and in a wetland, and listen. The water table is so high, if you go dig a fence post, you get foot in the ground, you're hitting water. I mean, it's really high right now. So these cities that have been struggling, I mean, Lynn Haven, poor Lynn Haven's been struggling with stormwater for 100 years. It's hard to move water on flat ground in a bowl. And so it used to be a swamp. Listen, where we're standing was a swamp. 23rd Street was a swamp. Where Gulf Coast Hospital was a swamp. I mean, it's all was swamp. So we brought a lot of dirt in here to fill it up, and we're doing better. We're doing better, but stormwater will probably always be somewhat of an issue in certain parts of this county. Yes, sir.
Along that same issue, you know, we lost so many trees.
Oh, yeah.
And they, told a pine tree can drink
125 gallons a day or something like that.
Crazy like that. Is there really any effort to do a mass planting?
Yeah, we've talked to USDA. Yeah, we've talked to USDA about that. It doesn't tend to. They tend to leave Bay County out of that conversation. We have to bring them in because they don't consider us like a rural county. But Washington, Holmes, Jackson, all those that really just have decimated Gulf, they've been working with USDA. So we had to kind of rope them into the conversation and say, look, our northern part of the county there were timber farms everywhere, and you've got to go work with these folks to help them get back. I mean, Moody's pasture lost like 4 million trees or something. I mean, it's the timber that's still on the ground 2.5 years later, almost 3 years later, is. I mean, we had a fire in Walton County yesterday. So you burned 3 houses to the ground. It's you got to be careful with fire and stuff on the ground like that. Any more questions? Thank y'all for your time. Thank you for the invite. Thank you, though, and I humbly ask for your vote next August. So thank y'all very much. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
And one more round of applause for Commissioner Griffitts.